My sister got a $75,000 wedding. I got a drugstore card worth $2.99. The price tag is still on it. I sit cross-legged in the front row of the Fairmont Hotel's Crystal Ballroom, surrounded by the scent of $45,000 worth of white orchids. My younger sister Emma adjusts her $3,200 Italian designer gown, the custom fabric catching golden light from crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than I make in 6 months. Her groom, James, twirls his Italian silk tie, each hand-sewn detail sparkling like scattered diamonds. 300 guests fill mahogany chairs tied with silk ribbons that cost $45 each. The floral arrangements tower from every surface, cascading like waterfalls of wealth. "Only the best for our Emma," Mom whispers to Aunt Patricia, her manicured fingers gesturing toward the orchid paradise. "We wanted her day to be absolutely perfect."
I smooth my navy blue Target dress, the same one I've worn to every family function for 3 years. The clearance tag, I never removed, scratches against my ribs like a constant reminder. $29.99, markdown section. My shoes are comfortable flats from Payless, resold twice, because spending money on myself feels impossible when there are student loans to pay and children to heal. In my lap sits their wedding gift to the happy couple, a greeting card from the CVS pharmacy aisle, the kind you grab while waiting to pick up prescriptions. Inside, Dad's cramped handwriting in blue ballpoint pen. From Sarah, best wishes. Not, "Love your sister, Sarah," not, "Congratulations from your family." Just my name, like I'm a distant acquaintance who happened to show up uninvited.
The cardstock feels thin between my fingers, cheap compared to the heavy ivory invitations they sent to everyone else. Meanwhile, their real wedding gifts cover an entire mahogany table draped in cream silk. Down payment for a $2.8 million house in Pacific Heights. A midnight blue Tesla Model S, a 2-week honeymoon suite in Tuscany at the Four Seasons, and a $25,000 check to get started in life, tucked inside a crystal picture frame. I calculated it 3 times on my phone, hoping the math was wrong. $187,000. More money than I've made in the last 4 years combined. But that's not even the worst part. My throat tightens as 31 years of memories flood back with perfect, painful clarity. This isn't some random moment of unfairness. This is the pattern of my entire life, crystallized into one devastating scene that makes every childhood disappointment suddenly make sense. Just last month, I'd finally saved enough to open my pediatric therapy practice. 7 years of night school while working as a physical therapy assistant. 7 years of ramen dinners and secondhand textbooks, falling asleep over anatomy diagrams after 16-hour shifts helping children recover from injuries and developmental delays. When I called to share the news, my voice shaking with excitement about Sarah Martinez's pediatric therapy center, Dad's response was flat and dismissive. "That's nice, Sarah. Your mother wants to tell you about Emma's promotion at the marketing firm."
I'd rehearsed my announcement for weeks, practicing in the mirror of my studio apartment bathroom. I'd imagined their faces lighting up with pride when I told them about the clinic I'd dreamed about since I was 8 years old and helped my neighbor's daughter learn to walk again after a car accident. Instead, the conversation shifted immediately to Emma making creative director at 28. The youngest in the firm's history, Mom had gushed, her voice carrying that particular note of pride I rarely heard directed toward me. "We're throwing her a celebration dinner at Morton's Steakhouse. You're welcome to come if you're not too busy with your therapy thing." My therapy thing. 23 years of education and training, countless children helped to overcome their challenges, a lifetime of dedication reduced to a dismissive afterthought that stung worse than any physical blow. Now I watch Dad beam as he escorts Emma toward the altar, his chest puffed with pride that radiates from every pore. The same man who missed my physical therapy certification ceremony because Emma had a gallery opening at her design studio. Not even a major exhibition, just a regular networking event. Emergency session with a child with cerebral palsy. I had explained to my dean when he asked where my family was. My cap and gown feeling heavy and meaningless, without anyone there to witness the culmination of my dreams. The lie tasted bitter. Even then. The wedding march begins, its familiar melody echoing off vaulted ceilings as 300 faces turn toward James's grand entrance. But my eyes remain fixed on the front row, where an empty chair should hold my husband, Michael. My husband of 2 years, the man who supported every dream, every late-night study session, every moment of doubt when I thought about giving up. Family only in the front, Mom had declared during seating arrangements, her voice carrying that tone of finality I knew better than to argue with. Michael can sit in row 5 with the other plus ones. Plus ones. Michael, who held my hand through Dad's heart attack last year while I performed CPR on the kitchen floor. Michael, who convinced me to give them another chance after every slight, every dismissal, every moment when I was made to feel invisible in my own family. Relegated to row 5 like a casual acquaintance who might not even show up. The ceremony begins with Father Mackenzie's voice filling the space. Dearly beloved, we gather today to celebrate the union of Emma Rose Martinez and James Alexander Thompson, two souls who have found in each other their perfect complement. Perfect complement. I shift in my seat, the hardwood uncomfortable against my spine. When Michael and I got married 2 years ago in a small ceremony at the courthouse, followed by dinner at Olive Garden, my parents missed it entirely. Couldn't get the time off work, Dad had said, though he'd taken 3 days off the previous week to help Emma move into her new apartment.
My phone vibrates against my thigh. A text from my clinic manager. Emergency. Hit-and-run victim. 6-year-old girl. Traumatic brain injury. Parents requesting you specifically. Child won't respond to anyone else. Family is devastated. I stare at the screen, reading the words twice to make sure I understand. Somewhere across the city, a family is falling apart while I sit here in this overpriced theater of favoritism, pretending my presence matters to people who've spent 3 decades proving it doesn't. The choice becomes crystal clear. A child's recovery hangs in the balance while I waste time watching the golden child receive her latest crown. I stand quietly, gathering my small purse and the drugstore card that represents everything wrong with this family dynamic. Several heads turn, including Mom's. Her eyes narrow with barely concealed irritation, her lips pressing into that thin line that signals incoming disapproval. "Where are you going?" she hisses, as I step past her carefully positioned knees, her whisper carrying the sharp edge of authority she's wielded over me since childhood. "To help a child walk again," I respond, my voice carrying clearly enough for the surrounding guests to hear every word. Something this family taught me has value. A ripple of confusion spreads through nearby rows. Aunt Patricia raises her eyebrows. Uncle Robert turns to stare. Cousin Jennifer whispers something to her husband behind her cupped hand. The couple sitting behind them cranes their necks to see what's happening in the front row during what should be a sacred moment.
The massive ballroom doors close behind me with a soft thud that echoes in the marble hallway like a judge's gavel.
In the ornate corridor lined with oil paintings of stern-faced women in Victorian dress, I kick off my uncomfortable heels and run toward the exit in stocking feet, the drugstore card still clutched in my hand like evidence of my diminished worth. My 15-year-old Honda Civic sits alone in the valet section, surrounded by BMWs, Mercedes, and Range Rovers that cost more than I make in 3 years. The contrast would be funny if it weren't so humiliating. The valet looks confused as I approach my beat-up car among the luxury vehicles, probably wondering how someone driving a Honda got into this elite wedding in the first place. By the time I reach the pediatric therapy center, tears blur my vision. But they're not tears of shame anymore. For the first time in years, they're tears of recognition, of finally understanding that I've been performing in a play where I was never cast as anything more than a background character. The 6-year-old girl lies still in the therapy room, her beautiful dark hair matted from the accident. Her name is Lily, according to the intake form, 6 years old. Beloved daughter of the Peterson family, traumatic brain injury, partial paralysis on her left side, possible speech impediments from where the truck clipped her while she was riding her bicycle. How long has she been here? I ask, while washing my hands with the methodical precision that took years to perfect.
2 hours, answers Maria, my therapy assistant. The family's in the waiting room. The parents, they keep asking if Lily will ever be normal again. I can hear Mrs. Peterson's quiet sobs through the therapy room walls as I prep for what might be the most important session of my career, not because of the complexity, but because of what it represents. This family loves their daughter the way families should love each other. Unconditionally, without keeping score, without making her earn affection through perfect behavior. This is what matters. This moment. This child's future hanging in the balance. Not crystal chandeliers or silk ribbons, or the empty performance happening across the city where 300 people pretend they're witnessing love when they're really watching a transaction between parents who confused financial support with emotional investment. 4 hours later, I emerge from the therapy session with exhaustion in my bones, but hope in my heart. Lily responded. Small movements at first, then deliberate attempts to follow my guidance. The session was touch and go for 90 minutes, but her young spirit kept fighting. Motor function showing improvement, speech responses positive, no permanent cognitive damage. She'll need intensive therapy, but she can make a full recovery. Mrs. Peterson looks up at me with tear-stained eyes. Her husband flanks her on uncomfortable plastic chairs, their faces drawn with the particular terror that comes from almost losing a family member. "Will Lily be okay?" Mrs. Peterson whispers, her voice so small it breaks something inside my chest. I kneel down to her level, my therapy badge still hanging around my neck. Lily is going to work very hard, and so are we. She responded beautifully today. Her brain is healing, and with time and therapy, she's going to surprise all of us with how strong she is. Mrs. Peterson bursts into tears of relief, reaching for her husband's hand. "I told you Dr. Martinez would help her. I told you Lily would fight through this." Mr. Peterson's eyes fill with gratitude as he shakes my hand. "Doctor, we can't thank you enough. Lily's been asking for you specifically since she woke up. The other therapists are good, but you make her feel safe. This is real love. This is what family looks like. Parents willing to fight for their daughter's recovery. A child who trusts me to help her heal. No scorekeeping, no conditions,
just pure, unconditional devotion. My phone shows 87 missed calls when I finally check it at 11:47 p.m. Not one asking if I'm safe, not one wondering if I had a medical emergency, all demanding explanations for my embarrassing behavior and attention-seeking stunt. Dad's voicemail plays first. "Sarah, how could you humiliate Emma on her wedding day? You've always been jealous, but this is unforgivable. Your behavior was selfish and childish. Call me back immediately." The word jealous hits like a slap. Jealous of what? A $75,000 wedding that represents everything shallow about their priorities? Money thrown at appearance instead of spent on meaning? Mom's message follows. "People are asking what happened to you. I told them you had a mental health episode and needed to leave for medication. This reflects on our entire family's reputation. You've embarrassed us in front of 300 people. A mental health episode. Because leaving to help a child couldn't possibly be the action of a sane, caring person. Because in their world, appearances matter more than emergencies. Social standing trumps medical ethics." Emma sounds genuinely confused rather than dismissive for once. "Sarah, what the hell? You made James confused during the ceremony. People were whispering about you instead of listening to our vows. He thinks you hate him. Fix this." I delete all 87 voicemails without listening to the rest. Not one person considered that I might have had a valid reason for leaving. The assumption was immediate and total. Sarah was causing problems again. Michael finds me at the clinic an hour later, still wearing my therapy clothes, staring at the wall of certificates that took decades to earn. Physical therapy degree from USC, pediatric specialization, neurological rehabilitation certification, developmental therapy training. Each one representing thousands of hours of study, years of sacrifice, expertise that changes lives daily. His wedding guest suit has been replaced by jeans and a sweatshirt. His formal appearance is gone, revealing the natural kindness that made me fall in love with him 5 years ago.
"How's Lily?" he asks, reading my face with the intuition that comes from actually knowing someone. "Responding well. Traumatic brain injury, partial paralysis, but she'll recover with intensive therapy. The family was so grateful they cried." "And how are you?" I consider the question carefully, testing my emotional state like checking a patient's progress. Tired of being their backup plan. Tired of apologizing for existing. Tired of pretending that love has to be earned through diminishment. Michael nods, taking my hand in both of his. His wedding ring catches the fluorescent light, a simple gold band that means more than any $75,000 spectacle could ever symbolize. "I've been thinking about what you said last week, about feeling invisible. Last week, the family dinner where I mentioned Michael and I were trying to have children, and Dad immediately launched into Emma and James's 5-year plan for kids, complete with private school research and college fund calculations. The conversation where Mom interrupted my story about successfully helping a child with autism learn to communicate to show everyone photos of Emma's new corner office with its view of the bay. I've been documenting things," Michael continues, pulling out his phone with the careful movements of someone handling evidence. "Not to hurt them, but so you can see what I see. So you can understand that this isn't normal family dynamics."
The photos span the last 2 years. Christmas morning, where Emma received a new BMW with custom leather seats, while I got a coffee mug from the gas station. Birthday dinners, where they forget to order dessert for me, but remember the specific type of cake Emma prefers. Family photos, where I'm consistently positioned at the edge of the frame, sometimes partially cut off entirely, as if the photographer was instructed to minimize my presence. "You're not imagining it," he says softly, scrolling through image after image of systematic exclusion. "This pattern is real, documented, undeniable. This is emotional abuse, disguised as family tradition." The words hit like a physical blow. Emotional abuse. I'd never applied that term to my childhood, my family, my experience. But seeing the evidence laid out systematically, the pattern becomes impossible to deny. And then the memories start flooding back. No longer isolated incidents, but part of a clear, documented pattern of favoritism that spans 3 decades. 6th birthday. Emma got a princess party with a hired entertainer, bouncy castle, and 30 neighborhood kids in party hats. Professional photographer, 3-tier castle cake, the works. Cost? $8,000, according to receipts I found years later in Mom's filing cabinet. My birthday, 3 months later. Grocery store sheet cake eaten at the kitchen table. 2 friends from kindergarten. Party supplies from the dollar store. "Your sister needs the social stimulation," Dad explained when I asked why mine was different. "You're more independent." Independent. Their code for "you don't need us." Christmas morning, age 10. Emma unwrapped a brand new bicycle, Nintendo Game Boy, designer clothes, a pile of presents that reached her chest. I got a backpack for school, socks, and a book about responsibility. When I asked Santa why the gifts were so different, Mom said, "Emma is still young enough to believe in magic. You're too mature for that nonsense." Too mature at 10 years old? Too independent at 6? Too capable at 8 when I learned to do my own laundry because they were too busy helping Emma with her homework that I was already doing without assistance? High school graduation. Valedictorian. My carefully crafted speech about persistence and dreams delivered to empty seats in the family section because Emma had a portfolio review at her art school. Not even an important presentation, just regular portfolio evaluation that somehow took priority over their daughter graduating at the top of her class. "We'll watch the recording," Mom promised. The VHS tape sat unwrapped on my dresser until I left for college. When I mentioned it years later, she claims she forgot where she put it.
"Your sister needs the encouragement," Dad said when I asked why they'd missed the biggest moment of my academic career. "You always succeed without our help." Without help. Their code for "you're on your own." College years flash before me as Michael continues scrolling through evidence I'd tried to forget. Working 25 hours weekly at the campus bookstore and cafeteria while taking maximum course loads to graduate early. Stretching student loans and scholarships while Emma explored artistic inspiration across Europe on our parents' dime. Care packages for Emma arrived weekly, expensive toiletries, gift cards, spending money, homemade cookies. I got nothing. When I mentioned feeling forgotten during one of our rare phone calls, Dad said, "Your sister needs to find herself. You've always known exactly who you are." Known who I am. Their code for "you don't deserve exploration." The pattern crystallizes with sudden, devastating clarity. Dad controlling the money, withholding from me while bankrolling Emma's every whim. Mom manipulating emotions, making me feel selfish for wanting even scraps of attention. The perfect system. One parent handling financial favoritism, the other maintaining emotional control. Meanwhile, I'd spent years thinking I wasn't trying hard enough to earn their love. The next morning brings an emergency family meeting, summoned with the imperious tone I've known since childhood. The text from Mom arrives at 7:23 a.m. "Sarah, we need to discuss your behavior immediately. Dad's house, 2 p.m. sharp. Don't bring Michael." This is family business.
Family business. As if Michael, my husband, my partner, the person who knows me better than anyone, is somehow excluded from matters that affect my life directly. I arrive at Dad's mahogany-paneled home office to find them arranged like a tribunal. Dad sits enthroned in his leather recliner that cost more than my monthly rent. Mom perched on the matching couch with her spine rigid and disapproving. Emma pacing by the window like a caged artist, preparing an exhibition defense. The setting feels familiar in the worst possible way. How many times have I been called to account for disappointing them? How many childhood moments ended with me in this room being lectured about my failures, my ingratitude, my inability to measure up to their expectations? Sit, Dad commands, gesturing to the small ottoman positioned to face all three of them like a defendant's chair. I remain standing by the door, my back straight and hands steady. I'll listen from here. Mom's lips purse with visible annoyance. Dr. Stevens from the country club says you're clearly having a breakdown. Missing Emma's wedding for a patient proves you've completely lost perspective on what matters. A patient. Lily isn't just some random case. She's a 6-year-old girl whose future depends on intensive therapy. But in their world, relationships with patients don't register as real or important. I left to perform emergency therapy on a critically injured child. Something I trained 13 years to do. Something I do to change lives.
Training we paid for, Dad interjects sharply, his voice carrying the weight of obligation he's held over my head for decades. Actually, you didn't. I pull out my phone, scrolling to a document I'd prepared during my sleepless night, every number verified against bank statements and loan documents. Student loans for undergraduate degree, $67,000, paid by me over 8 years. Physical therapy school tuition, $89,000, also paid by me through federal loans and work-study programs. Equipment for my clinic, $67,000, financed independently through a small business loan that I personally guaranteed. Their faces registered genuine shock, as if they'd rewritten history so thoroughly that they believed their own fiction. In their minds, they were generous parents who supported my education. The reality check hits like cold water. Meanwhile, I continue, consulting the notes that represent months of painful calculation. Emma's education, Art Institute undergraduate, $240,000, paid entirely by family trust. Graduate school for graphic design, $195,000, also covered. Her first studio space in Soho, $4,200 monthly rent, covered for 3 years. Her car, her wedding, her house down payment, her honeymoon. We were helping her establish her career in a competitive field, Mom defends, her voice ficking on that sharp edge that signals incoming justification.
You were investing in the child you valued. I established my career despite you, not because of you. Every success I've achieved came through my own effort, my own sacrifice, my own determination. Emma stops pacing, turning to face me with an expression I've never seen before. Confusion, mixed with something that might be guilt. That's not fair, Sarah. You never asked for help. The statement hangs in the air like a toxic cloud. I stare at her, this golden child who's never been denied anything, trying to process the sheer audacity of her words. I never asked for help. My voice remains steady despite the volcanic eruption happening in my chest. I asked constantly for 10 years. You just weren't listening because you were too busy enjoying the benefits of being the favorite. I walk to my car and retrieve a thick folder I'd spent months compiling like a prosecutor building a case. Bank statements showing their financial support of Emma while I worked 3 jobs through college, sleeping 4 hours a night, and living on peanut butter sandwiches. Email chains about family gatherings where my achievements were mentioned once, compared to 67 references to Emma's successes. Christmas lists, where Emma received everything she wanted while my requests were ignored or deemed too expensive. Exhibit A, I say, spreading photographs across Dad's pristine coffee table. Emma's 16th birthday party, catered event for 60 people, live band, rented sound system, cost $12,000 according to these receipts I found in Mom's filing cabinet. Mom's face flushes red. That was a special milestone birthday. My 16th birthday was 3 months later. Pizza from Domino's and a card cost $23.50. I lay out more evidence with the methodical precision of a therapist. Emma's high school graduation party, $8,000. Professional photographer, decorated tent, catered dinner. My graduation, cake from the grocery store, eaten in the kitchen while you discussed Emma's college plans. You were always so independent, Dad mutters, his usual justification sounding hollow even to his own ears. Independent by necessity, not by choice. Children shouldn't have to earn their parents' love through perfect behavior and self-sufficiency. The documentation continues. College care packages that arrived for Emma, filled with expensive toiletries, gift cards, and spending money, while I received nothing. Holiday breaks when Emma was flown home first class, while I stayed in empty dorms because traveling was too expensive. Spring break trips to Europe for Emma, while I worked double shifts at the campus bookstore.
This stops now, I announce, placing the final stack of evidence on Dad's coffee table. I'm done competing for scraps of attention from people who made their choice 31 years ago. "You're her daughter," Mom pleads, her first display of genuine emotion in this entire conversation. "Then start acting like I matter." I head toward the door, my hand steady on the brass handle. "When you're ready to have a relationship based on respect instead of obligation, call me. Until then, I have children to heal and a life to live. They appreciate what I do, even if you don't." The drive back to my clinic takes me through the neighborhood where I grew up, past landmarks that once represented home, but now feel like museums of disappointment. Past the house where I learned that love was conditional and I would always be second choice. Past the park where I played alone while Emma had friends over for elaborately planned birthday parties with hired entertainers. At a red light, my phone buzzes with a text from Michael. "How did it go?" I told them the truth. And they didn't like it, but I feel lighter than I have in years. The truth. Such a simple concept, yet completely foreign to my family dynamics. They had created an elaborate fiction where their favoritism was justified family management, where my independence was evidence of strength rather than neglect, where their differential treatment was natural rather than damaging.
But independence born from emotional neglect isn't strength, it's survival. And survival isn't the same as thriving. That evening, I sit in my clinic after hours, surrounded by the quiet activities of children recovering from various conditions. A young boy practicing walking with his new prosthetic leg, a girl working through speech exercises after a stroke, a child with autism learning to communicate through sign language. Each one represents a life improved, a family kept hopeful,
a purpose that transcends the petty dynamics of biological relationships. Lily, the 6-year-old from the wedding day, waves at me from her therapy mat. Her movement is still limited, but her eyes follow my movements with the gratitude that children express better than adults ever could. "You're going home this weekend, sweetheart," I tell her, kneeling beside her mat. "Your parents have been calling every hour to check on your progress. This is family. This is love. This is what matters." 2 weeks later, my phone rings with a number I don't recognize. The voice on the other end is shaky, unfamiliar. "Sarah, it's Emma." I almost hang up. Almost. But something in her tone stops me. "James left me," she says without preamble. "Found out about the BMW getting repossessed, about Dad losing his job, about the house being mortgaged to pay for the wedding. He said I'm a 31-year-old woman who's never learned to stand on her own."
The silence stretches between us across the phone lines. "He was right," she continues, her voice cracking. "I don't know how to do anything without Mom and Dad's money. I don't even know how to balance a checkbook. I'm drowning, Sarah. And for the first time in my life, I understand why you left." I find myself at a crossroads I never expected to reach. The sister who'd had everything handed to her on silver platters, asking for help from the sister she'd ignored for 3 decades. "I can't fix this for you, Emma," I say finally, "but I can teach you how to start fixing it yourself." 6 months later, I stand in my expanded pediatric therapy clinic, now employing 3 other therapists and serving over 500 families who trust us with their most precious children. The walls display thank you cards from grateful parents, photos of successful therapy sessions, awards from therapy associations, and my medical degree in a place of honor where everyone can see it. The local newspaper featured my innovative therapy techniques in a front-page story. "Local therapist changes lives through cutting-edge pediatric care." The phone hasn't stopped ringing with interview requests and new patient appointments since the article ran. None of my biological family called to congratulate me. The silence speaks volumes. Michael wears a simple gold band that represents daily choice, mutual respect, and the revolutionary concept that love should enhance rather than diminish.
We're trying for children now, and I know our kids will never wonder whether they're worth loving. They'll never have to earn affection through perfect behavior or compete with siblings for scraps of attention. My phone shows a missed call from Emma. Monthly calls that I answer when I feel like it, not from guilt or family pressure. "Sarah?" Her voice carries exhaustion, but something else too. Pride, maybe. "I got promoted to senior designer at the agency. It's not much, but I earned it myself." "That's huge, Emma. How does it feel?" "Terrifying," she admits, "but also real. For the first time in my life, something is actually mine." Some conversations with her go well, with glimpses of genuine insight and accountability. Others remind me why boundaries exist and why change is so difficult for people who've never had to examine their privilege. But she's trying, which is more than our parents ever did. Speaking of our parents, the consequences of their choices have been swift and brutal. Dad lost his job at the law firm 3 months after the wedding. Budget cuts, according to the official statement, but Emma told me the truth. Decades of missed work for Emma's events, plus the financial irregularities discovered when they investigated his expense reports. Turns out funding your daughter's lifestyle through company resources is considered embezzlement. Mom's in therapy now, prescribed anxiety medication after a series of panic attacks that started the week I blocked their numbers. The doctor told her the attacks stem from unresolved guilt and the realization that her emotional manipulation tactics no longer work on their targets. They sold the house to avoid bankruptcy. The mortgage they took out to pay for Emma's wedding, combined with Dad's legal fees and Emma's credit card debt they'd been secretly covering, left them drowning in obligations they could no longer meet. They live in a one-bedroom apartment now, the same complex where I lived during therapy school, working nights to afford rent while they took Emma to Aspen. The irony isn't lost on me. Last week, they showed up at my clinic unannounced. Not together, they're separated now, living in different buildings in the same complex because they can't afford separate complexes but can't stand being in the same room. Mom came first on a Tuesday afternoon when I was between therapy sessions. She looked smaller somehow, older, wearing clothes from Target instead of department stores. "We need to talk," she said, standing in my waiting room surrounded by families who actually love their children unconditionally. "We talked 6 months ago. You weren't interested in listening. Your father's in the hospital, heart attack. He's asking for you."
I felt the old pull, the trained response to drop everything and run to their rescue. But Dr. Rodriguez's words echoed in my head. Their emergencies don't constitute your obligations. "I'm sorry he's sick," I said, "but I'm not responsible for his health or his choices." "He could die, Sarah. Don't you care?" "I cared for 31 years. It nearly killed me. Now I care about people who care back." She left without another word. Dad came the following Thursday, walking slowly with a cane, his face gray with the particular exhaustion that comes from finally facing consequences. "I was wrong," he said without preamble. "About everything. The favoritism, the money, treating you like you didn't matter. I was wrong." "Yes, you were. I don't know how to fix it." "You can't fix 31 years of damage with an apology, but you can stop making it worse." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "James was right about Emma. We created a monster, and we threw away our daughter in the process." "You threw away your relationship with your daughter. I'm still here. I'm just not available for abuse anymore." 3 days later, James appears at my clinic during lunch break. He's thinner than I remember, his designer clothes replaced with jeans and a sweater that actually look like they belong to him, instead of a costume he's wearing.
"I owe you an apology," he says, settling into the chair across from my desk, "for the wedding, for not speaking up when I saw how they treated you, for being part of the problem. You weren't part of my family. You didn't owe me anything. I was marrying into your family. That made me complicit." He fidgets with his watch. "I thought the money meant they loved her more. Turns out it just meant they were destroying her more efficiently." "How is she?" "Learning, finally. It's painful to watch someone discover they don't know how to be an adult at 31, but she's trying. She talks about you constantly, about how you've always been the strong one, the capable one, the one who actually earned everything you have. I consider this. She's welcome to call me, but I won't rescue her from consequences she needs to experience. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking for something else." He pulls out a small velvet box. This was supposed to be Emma's wedding bracelet, the one I couldn't afford, but your parents insisted on buying anyway. It's worth about $15,000. He places the box on my desk. "I want you to have it, not to wear, but to sell. Use the money for your clinic or your future kids or whatever you want. Consider it payment for 31 years of being treated like you didn't matter by people who should have treasured you. I stare at the box without touching it. I can't take this.
Yes, you can. It's not charity, it's restitution from a family that owes you more than they can ever repay. That evening, Michael and I sit on our small balcony overlooking the city, where I've built a life that's actually mine. The bracelet sits between us on the table, catching light from the setting sun. "What are you thinking?" he asks. That I don't need their money anymore. I never did. So what will you do with it? I consider the question, watching the lights come on across the city. Somewhere out there, families are loving each other without keeping score. Parents are celebrating their children's achievements without making it a competition. Siblings are supporting each other instead of tearing each other down. I'm thinking about starting a scholarship fund for therapy students who are paying their own way through school, kids whose families don't believe in their dreams but who refuse to give up anyway. Michael's smile lights up his entire face. That's perfect. What will you call it? The Worth Foundation, because every child deserves to know they're valuable, whether their family recognizes it or not. 1 year later, I stand before a room full of therapy students who received our first round of scholarships. 25 young women who are working their way through school, sleeping in their cars between classes, living on ramen but refusing to quit their dreams.
Worth isn't something others assign to you, I tell them, looking out at faces that remind me of my younger self. It's something you claim by refusing to accept less than you deserve. In the front row, a girl named Jessica raises her hand. She's working 3 jobs to afford tuition, just like I did. "Dr. Martinez, what if your family never recognizes your worth? What if they never change?" I smile, thinking of the empty chair at Emma's wedding that became the first seat at my own table. Then you build a new family, with people who see your value from day one, people who celebrate your success without reservation, people who love you not because you're useful, but because you're you. After the event, my phone buzzes with a text from Emma. "Saw the article about your scholarship fund. I'm proud of you, really proud, and I'm sorry it took me 32 years to say that." Another message follows. "Dad's out of the hospital. Mom's doing better in therapy. They ask about you sometimes, not in the old way. They actually seem to miss you as a person, not as a problem to solve." I don't respond immediately. Some bridges take time to rebuild, if they can be rebuilt at all. But for the first time in decades, the messages don't make my stomach clench with anxiety or guilt.
That night, Michael and I host our weekly dinner for friends who've become family. The table is crowded with therapists, teachers, artists, and other people who've learned that blood doesn't make you related. Love and respect do. As we raise our glasses in a toast, I catch my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me is confident, successful, surrounded by people who choose to be there. She's worth far more than a drugstore card or a $75,000 wedding that was never really about love anyway. The empty chair at their wedding became my throne. Sometimes the greatest gift is realizing you don't need their permission to value yourself. Worth isn't something you earn through usefulness. It's something you claim by knowing what you will and won't accept. And I'm worth everything I refuse to settle for.